Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chai, Chat and Community. This afternoon, I'm chatting with Bwe Thay, Deputy Chair of the Victorian Multicultural Commission. Bwe is passionate advocate for a multicultural Australia. He has held many leadership roles within Victoria's multicultural sector with a focus on education and employment for new and emerging communities. He has received a range of community and academic awards for his contributions, including the VMC's 2018 Emerging Leadership in Multiculturalism Award. Bwe has also been a member of VMC's Eastern Metropolitan Regional Advisory Council since 2017, providing information about issues and challenges impacting multicultural communities in the region. He is a graduate from the Australian Catholic University and currently leads migrant student support at the Swinburne University of Technology. Hello, Bwe, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, Saliha. Thank you so much for having me. I apologize that I was not able to join at the accurate time, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. I have many questions for you, so I'll start off first by asking you about what is the Multicultural Commission and why was it set up and what were the core objectives?
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to start off by acknowledging the traditional custodians upon the land which I'm joining this discussion from, and I pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Just one quick question. Can you hear me clearly? If not, I'll try to...
Yes, absolutely. No, I can hear you perfectly, yes.
Just the other interview was not well, so
I'm fine.
I have to make sure. The Victorian Multicultural Commission was established about 35 years ago in 1983 as the main act. I apologize for that.
This is what happens when you're busy, yes.
Sincere apologies.
No, sir. Yes.
Yes, the Victorian Multicultural Commission was established about 35 years ago as the main link between the multicultural communities and the government. Our roles involved strengthening cultural diversity in Victoria through consultation, advocacy, celebration, and promotion. At the core of our work is community engagement. My fellow commissioners and I work at the grassroots level to understanding the issues facing multicultural communities and working alongside communities and faith groups to foster collaboration and unity. Our core objectives are to regularly consult with communities to identify and discuss issues and work together to find potential solution. And so partnership is a big thing here for us. We advocate on behalf of our communities to governments to address issues and ensure that their voice are heard. Yep. And as a community advocate, this is something that I'm also very passionate, and I've been doing it since my time here in Australia. We provide advice and recommendation to governments to improve laws, policies, and access to service, develop support partnerships to improve settlement program services, encourage all Victorians to celebrate, share, and preserve their cultural heritage, and promote the social, cultural, and economical benefit of diversity across Victoria. So that's, in a nutshell,
what you do. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And what is the relevance of the Victorian Multicultural Commission?
With around half of Victorians either born overseas or with at least one parent born overseas, Victoria is home to one of the most culturally diverse societies in the world. At the last census, 26% of Victorians' population spoke a language other than English at home, 32.6% in Greater Melbourne. Victoria's multicultural and multi-faith communities need a voice, and the VMC plays that vital role of connecting our communities and government through building understanding and communicating insights and information both direction. Um, the impact of the pandemic are a strong example of why the VMC is also so important and relevance of our role. It has amplified many existing areas of concern for our multicultural communities, including employment,
Yes.
mental health, racism, family violence, and access to culturally appropriate services. The VMC made a submission to the inquiry into the Australian government's response to the pandemic, drawing on our extensive consultation with our multicultural and faith communities. We recommended that the government and agencies embrace multicultural diversity when designing policies, programs, and services in response to the pandemic, such as providing accurate and access in language resources, in inclusive crisis support, including temporary visa holders, international students, asylum seekers, and refugees, and that our multicultural communities and faith organizations form part of that response to the crisis and recovery.
Thank you.
We, I'll just add on to that.
Yes, of course.
We measure our success not through numbers or statistics, but by the impact we have had on the ground with our multicultural and multi-faith groups. And I think that's very critical because we are working as a society, as a community, and numbers are critical, but looking at the impact and the bigger picture of how we respond to it is I think critical. And also we provide that feedback to our communities through our regional advisory councils and other key groups. I think information is power, and passing of that information both ways is critical. One of the success I've witnessed since joining the VMC over a year ago, and I'm sure there's heaps of them, but is how the VMC has been able to advocate for our communities to be heard and to have a place at the table and have a say what is impacting them during this pandemic. We were able to mobilize quickly to rally community leaders during the start of the Melbourne second lockdown, following the hard restriction in the northern suburbs, and also just that I guess that willingness from our community leaders. Until today, I cannot thank them enough for stepping up to those opportunities, to making sure that our broader communities are informed where they can get tested, where they can find those accurate information. And working alongside them has been a pleasure. And so, yeah, I'll end there and we'll wait for the next question. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, this is something that you've just touched on, but I'll ask anyway. Why is it important to have the call representation?
Being someone from the new and emerging community, I think inclusion is very empowering, and I guess having everyone on the table is critical, as I stated earlier. And I think it's important that our culturally diverse representation is there in decision making, because that means we'll be able to understand things that really impact our communities at the short, medium, and also long-term solutions. Having those voices of our communities represented and being able to find a common ground or a solution together, I think is key as we come out of these lockdowns and we're heading towards the easing of restrictions. But that does not end there. We still have a long way to go, and also I think we all have a role to play in terms of keeping our communities safe. The other bit I just wanted to also mention is that having that diverse representation provides different perspective and experience
Yeah.
to inform decisions that affect our lives. And I think that is very empowering for many of the communities that I closely work with, and having a say on the table, but also having a say on those decisions that impact their life is very, very critical. It also means that the government can genuinely reflect the communities it serves,
Yes.
and also making sure that the community's capacity can be harnessed in all aspects, I should say. And last, but just two more points I wanted to add there. Apart from the representation, also that I mentioned earlier, there are many communities who have been disappropriately affected, and the impact has been much longer lasting for some communities than others. And during this pandemic, where it is critical that it highlighted, I should say, in a way that many of our concerns and gaps in the areas of the needs of our communities, the solution is going to be different from communities to community.
Yes.
And so those representation will give the opportunity to create customized solutions for different communities and also different region. And we have a different, I guess, health restriction here in Melbourne, and in the regional towns we have a very
Yes.
different one. So based on our community's need, having that representation is critical.
So there is never a one shoe fits all kind of a scenario, is there? I mean, every community has different needs.
Every community has its different needs and also challenges, but that is also the beauty of diversity.
Of course.
It brings it makes us to experience, I guess, the full spectrum of being alive.
Yes.
That
So what is the share of culturally and linguistically diverse representation in local, state, and federal government?
one one in four Australians who were born overseas, so that's about 46% of the population having at least one parent who was born overseas. Overall, in Australia, we speak more than 200 languages other than English, and so it is clear that the government at all levels do not yet reflect the wider community they served. So I think there is that we're working towards a more inclusive society, but there's always gaps, and nothing is perfect. But I think as long as we're heading on the right direction, I think that is key. If we want our government service that better meet the needs of our multicultural and multi-faith communities, then we need to speak up and have people who understand the issues, setting the direction and making the decisions. I was inspired and by the diverse Victorians recognizing that they can have a voice and putting themselves forward to be of service through community, the communities that they serve, and also through the recent council election, we saw the rise of our diverse communities putting their hands up, trying to serve our communities at that local government level. So I was immensely proud of that, and I cannot say it enough. And to see so many candidates, and also a younger participation,
Yes.
of our multicultural youth stepping up on those positions, putting themselves out there. Much credit to them, and very, very proud of them. I want to also acknowledge and congratulate these candidates, because it is aspirational for our communities, because it sets the agenda for the next generation.
Absolutely.
That we all can have a say. And so it is a glimpse of what is, I think, yet to come, and I'm excited about it.
In fact, beginning this month, I actually interviewed about eight such people, 6 or 7 of them ladies and the others and 2 men, and everyone from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. And just their mission and vision and what they can bring to the community has been so amazing.
It is indeed, and thank you so much for giving them, another channel to reach out to our community. So much credit to you.
Thank you. So I know you talked about working with community leaders to achieve your objective, but is there any other way that you reach out to the community?
So we have both formal and also ad hoc ways of how we engage with our communities. So we seek insight for our communities through the Regional Advisory Council. As you stated earlier in my introduction, I used to be for the Eastern region, and that is a great platform where you can represent the broader communities and raise some of the concerns that impact our communities. We also work very closely with the Multi-Faith Advisory Group and also the Multicultural Chamber of Commerce Group, and consult. We have a very open door policy in terms of working based on the needs of our communities or the requests of our communities. And we work very closely with community leaders and key stakeholders. These insights that they have provided, we've been able to position it to the Victorian government so that when they develop policies or legislations, the community's voice is reflected there, but also it has a more positive impact onto our communities. Much of our work is in the background, so raising issues directly with the Minister of Multicultural Affairs, different government departments and agencies, being involved in various specialist advisory committees and discussions, roundtables, and well, we have a team of commissioners who are very, very passionate in terms of representing the voice of the commission, and we contribute, I guess, in every way that we can, and we never say no. And I think that's the beauty of it. We want to make sure that our communities are heard, our communities are represented, and that our our community's needs are at the forefront, and finding a solution together, working, I guess, in partnership, I should say, and those are some of the bits that we have done. And also just wanted to add some of the things we have done in the last 12 months. Our submission to the Australian government coronavirus response was one, and also we have provided in response to the Victorian Parliament inquiry into anti-vilification protection, informed by decisions and consultation with community representatives, leaders, and experts in that field. We also consulted with our diverse communities and stakeholders. We made a number of submissions to the Victorian Parliament inquiry into early childhood engagement with culturally and linguistic diverse communities. And so in a way, we're making sure that, just like the messaging during this pandemic, that no one's left behind. So we're just trying to make sure that we can contribute as much as possible to this ongoing, I should say, discussion around multiculturalism and also things that impact our communities.
Thank you. So this is something that has always, it is something that I always think about. How do you get your messages across to, to the population, especially if they don't understand English or English is not their first language? And both you and I know there are many, many such pockets of people for whom English is not only their second language, but they don't understand it.
So I guess the partnerships that we have had with our community leaders is very critical in terms, I guess, if we're speaking about over 200 languages, it's hard to translate everything in a timely manner. So that partnership we have and harnessing on the the relationship we have with community leaders from the diverse background, I think, is critical there, and passing on those relevant questions. During this pandemic, we've had those roundtable discussions with different community groups, and it was amazing to see so many passionate community advocates and community champions, I should say, come on board those discussions, and then taking that message back to their communities, respectively. We also provide our, I guess, the online platform through our social media channels, in languages service, and also through our regular newsletter, which is very well received by our communities. One of our recommendation to the inquiry into the government's response to the pandemic was for accurate and timely translation, and we shared this through our channels that we have worked very closely with, and also the representatives from these communities were able to take it back, and often coming from one of the new and emerging community, there are some languages which are formal and sometimes can be quite difficult to translate
Yes,
directly,
I can tell you.
and
Yes,
things can get lost in translation. So
yes,
bringing those contexts back, so those community champions are very, very critical in terms of making sure that um, those message are accurate, but also not taken out of context.
yes,
And that is one of the very, very important element, I think. And also, we advocated for more, I should say, visual materials. There are some languages which many of the communities have been deprived of, learning, and so the visual materials and audio translated health messaging were also very critical and very, very well received by our communities. And importantly, it is about ensuring our messages are shared across the communities through a number of those regional advisory council. So it's not just Melbourne centric, but
yep,
we're making sure that all those of our communities, the diverse communities living in regional towns, are also being given those access to those resources. They are informed. They can make the right decisions. And with over 250 members of advisory council members, we are able to harness so much intelligence, but also at the same time provide those messaging back to their local communities across Victoria. And our network of regional advisory council committee has been critical during this time, and they play an amazing role, and so much credit to them for all the work that they do, making sure that information is passed quickly, relevantly, both ways, towards the VMC, so that we can advocate up, and also back to their communities in a timely manner. So, yep.
with these are two topics I'm very, very passionate about. So I'm going to ask family abuse and mental health. Both of them have been on rise during this lockdown period. What is VMC doing about it? How are you sharing, information with community leaders, and how do you share positive messages and helpful resources?
Mm-hmm. The UN has described the worldwide increase in family violence as a shadow pandemic alongside
Yes,
coronavirus, COVID-19. Reports indicate that family violence has increased worldwide, not only here or in a specific country. And during this, especially Victoria, having gone through this very a long period of lockdown, there are gaps in services for our diverse communities, and also for our families to access. And so this is where, as I mentioned earlier, the sense that because of this pandemic, there is pressure on the system, and and it also shows the I guess places or areas where things could improve. And I think in terms of support, for family violence need to increase, and it has clearly stated that. And also the capacity to respond efficiently for our multicultural communities um, is needed. There is still limitation. Um, Earlier this year, the VMC allocated funding to support projects that enhance social cohesion and connection during the pandemic, and a significant portion of these fundings have been granted to to these projects that target family and domestic violence. Uh, we're supporting several projects in partnership with community organizations throughout the COVID crisis, including training for our multicultural frontline workers to support family violence, um, supporting refugee women experiencing family and domestic violence, providing online support for women impacted by abuse, trauma, and isolation, and in a first of its kind building service for culturally and linguistic diverse men who are, you know, who are using family violence. So the funding for these programs are also supporting the development of an online mental health hub, another of its first of its kind in Victoria. The hub will be a one-stop shop to provide information about booking services and also finding relevant. The internet is a vast space, and if you don't know what you're looking for, it takes forever. And so making those accessing those services, um, I guess, easier, but also narrowing it down for the communities is critical. I am one of the multicultural ambassador for the Mental Health Foundation of Australia, and uh, for far too long, our multicultural communities have been suffering in silence. And I think that was why back in 2017, I joined up to be an advocate and raise awareness around mental health for our communities. And it's something that I'm very passionate because it can impact anyone. And if language is a barrier for you, it makes the challenges twice. And so I'm very mindful of that space, and um, uh, I feel very privileged that I can advocate on causes that I am very passionate about, or also very close to my heart. Um, the These projects that are rolling out have been, I guess, looked after by some of our commissioners who are working on grants, and also grants application, but also supporting those organizations, making sure that uh, it is a user friendly, accessible services for our communities.
Thank you. Coming down to economics, many of our diverse population, they have small businesses, and COVID has played havoc with those small businesses. How are you engaging with them?
Mm-hmm. So the Victorian Multicultural Chamber of Commerce, a group, brings together more than 40 Victorian chambers to exchange ideas and information. And during this pandemic, we are also very aware that going into the recovery phase, our communities are going to face enormous challenge, both from a business owner perspective, but also for our communities trying to enter workforce for the first time. And I feel very privileged to be a part of the working group, multicultural working group, where we've had many like-minded business owners, but also community advocates, community champions coming on board and contributing cohesively, trying to find a solution for our communities. What next? Once this pandemic, going into the recovery phase, how can we better advocate for our communities so that our communities are not left behind? And you might have heard through different media channels as well how it has impacted globally. So
Yes,
many
of course,
economies
yes.
broken, so many industries have been impacted immensely. So here in Victoria, through the work of the commission, the VMC, we are able to bring like-minded people together, finding ways how we can, put recommendation forward to different departments of the government.
My last question, Bwe, I know you're very busy. So, apart from the multicultural representatives, who are the other stakeholders that you work with?
So the VMC works with a range of stakeholders alongside multicultural communities and organizations, and the saying goes, to deliver our objective of strengthening, social cohesion and multiculturalism in Victoria. It takes a village to raise a child. So it takes a whole of government and whole of community approach, and so everyone has a role to play. That's in a nutshell. Government departments and also like areas like Victoria Police, the Department of Education, who are key in the upcoming, partners for the Victorian, the VMC Excellence Award. And so these are also other areas where it is very critical in terms of promoting, but also engaging our multicultural communities. So these are two of the areas that we work very closely with for the upcoming Multicultural Awards, I think in December. So for our viewers, please tune in. This is a great opportunity for the broader communities to see and celebrate the wonderful contributions of our community champions. We continue to work very closely with the Department of Job, Precinct and Regions as the small businesses community begins to reopen. And so, exploring ways how we can, support them through COVID-safe advice and also messaging. We've recently partnered with the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission to deliver a series of workshops to educate and empower our multicultural and multi-faith communities in Victoria. And one, I was able to also participate in that, and it was very empowering for our community. Some of the feedbacks we received was so well received from our community. So partnership is a very big part of the VMC, building those partners in delivering on the needs of our communities, I should say. So, and also we support organizations through our community support funds. So this is through the different projects that our commissioners have been involved with, and also the continued work, I think, towards not only the immediate pandemic situation, but also for the medium and also future sustainability of these relationships, how we can strengthen them. And we engage with organizations from all sectors, I should say, to bringing Victorians together to celebrate and preserve our cultural, diverse culture, and to promote inclusion and build that sense of belonging and building a welcoming society.
Thank you, Bwe. Thank you for joining me today. And
thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
Okay, goodbye, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.